Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right.
Mm.
Good morning, Sunnies. Let's take a bite of English for a better you.
Good morning, Sonny. That's a quote by Henry Ford, isn't it? A very powerful way to start the day.
It is, and it's the perfect theme for our topic today, the power of belief. We're going to explore how our mindset can be the biggest factor in our success, especially when learning something new like English.
I'm intrigued. So, how does that work?
Think of your brain as a super advanced GPS.
Mm.
The thoughts and beliefs you put into it are the destination you set. If you tell your GPS, I want to become a confident English speaker, your brain starts calculating the route and looking for opportunities to get you there.
A GPS for success. I love that analogy. So, what's our first stop on this journey?
Our first chapter is about the science of belief. Let's start with something you may have heard of, the placebo effect.
Right. That's used in medical studies, isn't it? Where some people get a real medicine and others get a fake one, like a sugar pill.
Exactly. A placebo is a substance with no therapeutic effect. But here's the amazing part. In many studies, a significant number of patients who receive the placebo report feeling better. Their symptoms actually improve.
Wow. So, is it magic? How can a sugar pill cure a headache?
It's a fascinating question. It's not magic, but the power of the human mind. When you truly believe something will work, your brain doesn't just sit back and watch. It actively participates. It can trigger the release of endorphins, which are the body's natural painkillers. So in the case of a headache, your brain can literally create its own medicine. It feels like magic, but it's pure neuroscience. The pill itself does nothing. It's the patient's belief in the treatment that triggers a real physical response.
The belief.
Yes, because they expect to get better, their brain releases its own natural pain-relieving chemicals like endorphins. Their mind creates a physical reality. It's a perfect demonstration of the principle we call mind over matter.
Mind over matter. I see. It reminds me of when I was learning to ride a bike. I kept falling and I told myself I'll never get this. But my dad told me to close my eyes and just imagine myself riding perfectly. I did, and on the next try, I actually rode for a few meters. My belief changed.
That is a brilliant real-world example, Alex. Your initial belief was creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure. When you changed your belief, you changed the outcome. That's the placebo effect in everyday life.
That makes so much sense.
This idea leads us perfectly into our second chapter, the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, a theory developed by psychologist Carol Dweck.
Okay, I'm ready. What's a fixed mindset?
A fixed mindset is the belief that your intelligence, talents, and abilities are fixed traits, that you're born with a certain amount, and that's it. Someone with this mindset might say, I'm just not a math person, or for language learners, I'll never sound like a native speaker.
I've definitely heard people say that. It's like they've already decided their limit.
Exactly. They see challenges as threats to their intelligence, and they often give up when things get difficult to avoid failure. But on the other hand, we have the growth mindset.
Okay, so that must be the opposite.
It is. The growth mindset is the belief that your abilities can be developed through dedication, effort, and good strategies. It's not about being born smart, it's about becoming smarter. Someone with a growth mindset would say, this grammar is confusing, but I can understand it if I practice, or my pronunciation can improve with feedback.
That feels so much more hopeful and empowering. So, how does this apply directly to learning English?
It's crucial. Language learning is full of challenges. A fixed mindset learner might hit a plateau and think, this is my limit. But a growth mindset learner will see it as a signal to try a new study method. They're not afraid to make mistakes when speaking because they see mistakes as learning opportunities. This builds resilience.
Resilience, that's the ability to bounce back from difficulty, right?
Yes, exactly. It's one of the most important skills for any long-term goal.
Okay, this is great theory, but how can our listeners actively build this mindset? I feel like we need some practical steps.
I agree. That's our third chapter. Practical steps to cultivate a growth mindset. To cultivate means to grow or develop something. So, tip number one is the simplest, but maybe the most powerful. Add the word yet.
Yet?
Yes, the next time you think, I can't do this, or I don't understand, just add the word yet to the end of the sentence. I can't do this yet. I don't understand yet.
I don't understand phrasal verbs versus I don't understand phrasal verbs yet. Wow, that one little word changes everything. It turns a permanent statement into a temporary one.
It opens the door to future possibility. Okay, tip number two, embrace challenges. To embrace something means to accept it willingly and with enthusiasm. Instead of avoiding difficult tasks, see them as puzzles to be solved.
So if I'm nervous about ordering coffee in English, I should embrace that challenge and do it anyway.
Exactly. See it as a mission. Your goal isn't just to get coffee, it's to practice your speaking skills in a real world situation. Each challenge you embrace makes your brain stronger. And this leads to tip number three. Learn from your mistakes and setbacks. A setback is a problem that makes progress more difficult.
That's the hardest one for me. I hate making mistakes.
Many people do. But think about Thomas Edison. When he was inventing the light bulb, it said he had over 1,000 failed experiments. A reporter asked him, how did it feel to fail 1,000 times? Edison replied, I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps.
What a fantastic perspective. Each mistake was just a step in the process, not a failure.
Precisely. And how we talk to ourselves about these steps is incredibly important. This brings us to our final chapter for today, the role of self-talk.
You mean our inner voice, the little narrator inside our heads?
That's the one. Your self-talk is the stream of unspoken thoughts running through your head. If that voice is constantly negative, I sound so stupid, everyone is better than me, this is too hard, it reinforces a fixed mindset.
Right. It's like having a critic in your head 24/7.
But if you can guide that inner voice to be more positive and encouraging, it reinforces a growth mindset. The key is to catch negative thoughts and reframe them. To reframe something means to change the way you see it or think about it.
Okay, can you give us an example of how to reframe a thought?
Of course. Let's say you catch yourself thinking, this is too hard. Acknowledge that thought and then consciously change it. Reframe it as, this is a challenge and I can grow by working through it.
Okay, let me try one. My negative thought is often, I'll never remember all this vocabulary.
A perfect example. How could you reframe that?
Maybe there are many new words and I will focus on learning a few of them each day. Every word I learn is progress.
That's a fantastic reframe, Alex. It changes the feeling from overwhelming to manageable and positive. Your inner voice becomes your coach, not your critic.
This has been incredibly insightful, Sunny. My brain GPS is already recalculating its route.
I'm glad to hear it. Let's do a quick vocabulary recap before we finish.
Great idea. First, we had the placebo effect. That's when a fake treatment works simply because a person believes it will.
Right, which demonstrates mind over matter, the idea that our minds can influence the physical world.
Then, fixed mindset, the belief that abilities are unchangeable, versus growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed.
And a growth mindset helps build resilience, the power to recover from difficulties.
We learned 3 action verbs: to cultivate, meaning to develop, to embrace, meaning to accept willingly, and to reframe, which means to see things differently.
And we talked about setback, a temporary problem, self-talk, and your inner voice.
That's a lot of great vocabulary.
It is. So the main takeaway for all our Sunnies today is this. Your belief is not just a thought, it's a powerful tool. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can control your mindset. You can choose to cultivate a growth mindset.
And that choice can make all the difference.
Absolutely. So for your homework this week, we have a challenge for you. We want you to find an I can't statement in your life and add yet. In part 1, we laid the foundation by talking about what beliefs are and how they shape our world. Let's dive even deeper.
That's right, and I've got my coffee ready. I have a feeling we're going to need the brain power for this one, Sunny.
You're not wrong, Alex. So let's jump right into chapter 3, the inner voice.
The inner voice. Okay, you mean that little narrator inside our own heads?
Exactly. We all have one, but today we're focusing on a specific and often very loud part of that voice. We call it the inner critic.
Oh, the inner critic. I know that guy. He's not always very nice. He's the one who shows up right before I have to do something important, like give a presentation, and he whispers, "You're not ready for this. You're going to forget everything."
That's a perfect example. The inner critic is the source of our negative self talk. For English learners, it can be especially persistent. It might sound like, my accent is so bad, nobody can understand me.
Right, or I just made a grammar mistake. Everyone must think I'm so foolish.
Exactly. Another common one is, I'll never sound like a native speaker, so what's the point? This voice can paralyze us. It can make us afraid to speak, afraid to practice, and afraid to make the very mistakes that help us grow.
It's so true. So why do we even have one? Why is our brain so mean to us sometimes?
That's a fantastic question. Believe it or not, the inner critic thinks it's helping. Its original job was to keep us safe. Thousands of years ago, being rejected by your social group could be a death sentence. So the brain developed this mechanism to warn us, don't do that, you might get embarrassed. Don't try that, you might fail.
So it's like an overprotective parent that's trying to keep us from getting hurt, but it's actually stopping us from living.
Precisely. It hasn't updated its strategy for the modern world, where making a mistake in English class won't get you kicked out of the tribe. The good news is, we don't have to listen to it. We can learn to reframe its messages.
Okay, so what does reframe mean here?
Reframing is about changing your perspective. It's like taking a picture and putting it in a different frame. The picture is the same, the situation hasn't changed, but a new frame can make you see it completely differently. One of the most powerful ways to do this is with a simple language switch, changing I have to into I get to.
Right, we touched on this last time. So instead of saying, I have to study these irregular verbs,
You say, I get to study these irregular verbs. You are framing it as an opportunity, not a burden. Millions of people wish they had the chance to learn a new language. You get to do it. Think about other areas. I have to give a presentation in English.
that could become, I get to share my ideas with my colleagues, or I get to practice my public speaking skills. Wow, it really does change the feeling from one of dread to one of gratitude.
It does. This is what we mean by a perspective shift. It's a conscious choice to view a situation from a more empowering angle. Another way is to turn a problem into a challenge. Problem sounds heavy and negative. Challenge sounds like something you can rise to and overcome.
So my pronunciation is a problem becomes improving my pronunciation is my next challenge. I like that. It feels more active.
Exactly. And we can strengthen this new perspective with affirmations. An affirmation is a short, positive statement that you declare to be true. It's about programming your brain with a better belief.
Can you give us some examples of good affirmations for English learners?
Of course, you could say, I am becoming more fluent in English every day, or I communicate my ideas clearly and confidently. A really important one is, every mistake I make is a step forward in my learning process.
I love that last one. It reframes mistakes as a good thing, not something to be ashamed of.
It does. And the key with affirmations is to say them with feeling. Say them out loud in front of a mirror. Write them down. You need to feel the truth in them. It's about training your inner voice to be a cheerleader, not a critic.
Okay, this is making so much sense. We understand the inner critic and we have some tools to start changing its tune.
Yes, and now let's make it even more practical. It's time for our next chapter. Are you ready for Sunny's action plan?
I am so ready. Give me the steps.
All right, Chapter 4, Sunny's action plan. I have 3 simple but powerful steps you can start using today. Step 1 is catch yourself.
Catch yourself? What do you mean?
I mean, become aware of your thoughts. Most of the time, our inner critic is running on autopilot. We don't even notice it's talking. The first step is simply to notice. When you hear that negative thought, like, I'm so bad at this, don't fight it. Don't argue with it. Just catch it.
So you just observe it like you're watching a cloud pass in the sky?
That is the perfect analogy, Alex. You pause, you take a breath, and you can even label it. You can say to yourself, that's my inner critic again, or that's just a limiting belief. By labeling it, you create distance. You show yourself that you are not the thought. You are the one who observes the thought.
And I guess you shouldn't feel bad for having the thought in the first place, right?
That's the most important part. No judgment. The thought is not the problem. It's just an old, unhelpful habit of the brain. The goal is awareness, not perfection. So that's step one, catch yourself.
Okay, I can do that. What's step two?
Step two is a tiny word with huge power. The step is add yet. After you catch a negative thought, you simply add the word yet to the end of the sentence.
Yet. It's so small, but it changes everything. So if my thought is, I can't understand this podcast without the transcript,
It becomes, I can't understand this podcast without the transcript yet. See the difference? The first statement is a fact, it's final. The second statement recognizes your current situation, but implies that it's temporary. It opens the door to future possibility.
let's try a few more. I'm not confident speaking English becomes, I'm not confident speaking English yet. Or I haven't mastered phrasal verbs becomes, I haven't mastered phrasal verbs yet. It instantly makes it less frustrating.
It really does. It's a bridge from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. So we have catch yourself and add yet. Now for the final creative step. Step 3 is visualize.
Visualize, like imagining thing.
Exactly. The brain is incredibly powerful. It often can't tell the difference between a real memory and a vividly imagined one. We can use this to our advantage. I want you and everyone listening to take a few moments each day to visualize your success.
So you're saying we should daydream about being fluent?
It's more focused than daydreaming. Be specific. Imagine a real situation. For instance, imagine yourself walking into a cafe. See the barista, hear the sounds of the coffee machine. Then, in your mind, walk up to the counter and confidently say, "Hi, could I please have a large latte?" Hear your own voice, clear and steady. Feel the warmth of the cup in your hand.
That's very detailed. By doing that, you're almost practicing in your mind before you do it in real life.
That is exactly what you are doing. You are building the neural pathways for success. You're making the unfamiliar feel familiar. This reduces anxiety and builds genuine confidence. All these steps work together to change your beliefs, which brings us to a really important concept, the self-fulfilling prophecy.
A self-fulfilling prophecy. That sounds serious. What is it?
A self-fulfilling prophecy is when a belief or expectation, whether it's true or not, influences our behavior in a way that makes that belief come true.
Okay, can you give an example?
Absolutely. I once had a student who was brilliant, but she was convinced she was terrible at taking tests. Before every exam, she would tell herself, "I'm just going to fail." Because she believed this so strongly, her behavior changed. She became too anxious to study effectively. The night before, she couldn't sleep. During the test, her mind went completely blank because all she could think about was failing.
And let me guess, she didn't do very well on the test.
She didn't. Her belief that she would fail created the exact conditions that led her to failing. It was a negative, self-fulfilling prophecy. But then we worked on it. We used these exact steps. She started catching the thought. She started using affirmations like, "I am a calm and focused test taker." She visualized herself finishing the test and feeling proud.
And what happened?
Her new belief changed her behavior. She studied calmly, she slept well, she walked into the test feeling prepared, not panicked, and her scores improved dramatically. She created a positive self-fulfilling prophecy. What we believe about our ability directly impacts our results.
That's an incredible story. It just shows how much power our own thoughts have over our lives. It's not about magic, it's about how our beliefs drive our actions.
You've got it. So, as we wrap up today's episode, let's summarize the key message. The voice in your head, your inner critic, doesn't have to be the boss. It's an old program that you can update.
And we can do that through a perspective shift by reframing things with simple phrases like I get to instead of I have to. But Sunny, I have a question. It's one thing to feel motivated after listening to a podcast, but how do we keep this going? How do we make sure this isn't just a temporary boost?
But before we get to our final summary, I think we need to address one more crucial aspect of this process. It's not enough to feel motivated for one day. We need to think about the long term. And remember Sunny's action plan. 1. Catch yourself and notice the thought without judgment. 2. Add the powerful word yet to turn a period into a comma. And 3. Visualize your success in vivid detail to build your confidence before you even start.
Because what you believe can become your reality, a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. This was a big topic, so if you want a very fast 1-minute review of these ideas, be sure to check out our new YouTube Shorts this week. It's a great way to reinforce what you've learned.
A perfect plan. Thank you for listening, everyone. We believe in you.
Have a sunny day.
Bye.